Hi, and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn webinar, where we're going to be focusing on the Builder module and all of the great features that are included here for you. Using the Form Builder in your account, you're able to create and manage your own form templates, incorporating a wide range of features that we'll cover off today. Let's get started. All right, so this page here I have accessed by going into my account and selecting the Forms option. And then I've gone into View Form Templates and selected one of the available templates in my account. When you do start a fresh Formitize account with us, there will be some demonstration templates in there for you that you can use to edit and have a play around with some of the cool features that we have available. So within the form template itself, there are a couple of tabs of settings and options that we can customize for the form template. So we will cover those off today, focusing primarily on the form builder where we can change and manage the form content itself. In the form details, we can add a title and a description for our form, and then we can also select what type of form and where it's available. So by default, the form will be available in both the app and your web portal, but we can make the form only available to our web portal users. The form mode can be selected, and there's a couple of different options here depending on what you're looking to do with that form template. So Safety First will allow the form to be added to any job type template for your job scheduler as a Safety First form. So what this means is that the user, when they're completing a scheduled job with a Safety First form and job forms included, they will have to complete any of the Safety First forms first prior to accessing and completing the job reports. So this can just make sure that for your health and safety compliance, these forms are being completed when they need to, and all of that information is being captured as part of your job. Beta mode means that you can select this mode when you're testing the form and you don't want it to be available to the wider users. And kiosk mode can be used for forms such as a check-in or sign-in form, where you may want a copy to be completed one after the other. So when this form or this mode is selected, it means that the details can be entered into the form template. And when that form is submitted, the page will refresh with a clean or fresh version of that form ready to go. If you have compliance information that needs to be tracked for your forms, you can add this to the version control details, and these can also appear in the final PDF report for you. For any of your form templates, you're also able to manage the group permissions. So what this does is where you have different user groups set up in your Formitize account, you can select different groups to have varying access to the form templates. So if you want only some user groups to be able to start and view the form, then you can have the first user group permission selected. But for some user groups, you may also want them to have the option to edit submitted forms of this type. So this can just help you to manage what groups of users can see this form template, and that can really help to streamline the process of completing or searching for those forms within the app for a field user, for example. If you have the web form add-on feature activated within your account, you then will also have web form options available as part of any of your form templates. So when this is enabled, it does give you a list of settings here that we can manage. The first one being a generic URL link that can be shared with any external party to then complete a blank copy of the form template. You can also generate this URL as a QR code that could then be printed off and assigned or placed where you need that form to be completed. If you have a website that you want to embed the web form on, you can use the iframe code available here, and you can also redirect the where the user is taken once they submit the web form to your own URL or a designated website address as well. Now for the images tab here, we can add any static images that we may want to use as part of our form template. So any images that we upload to this tab of the form will then be available to select within the form builder as part of an image field. So this can be relevant, for example, as we can see here, for a risk matrix that the user may need to refer to, and it's the same for each form that is being completed. Now moving on to the Form Builder tab, this is where we can create and manage our form content. So when we're looking at the Form Builder tab, there's 3 different areas of the Form Builder that we can focus on. The first one being our toolbox, where we have different categories of all of the fields that you can drag and drop into your form content. So you can expand these categories to see the full list of options, and we'll be going through some of those key features today, just explaining the different ways that they can be used, as well as the settings and options available to you. In the middle here is where we can see our form content. And as you see, this layout here is very similar to how it will be shown to the user that is completing that form template, which makes it nice and easy for you to visualize how that information would be completed and what that experience is going to be for the user. On the right-hand side here, when we have selected any field, so we can see that the full name is selected because the title is blue, we have the field settings. So for each of the different fields that we have available to us within the form builder, there will be a different range of settings just depending on that field type and what we can do with it. I'll go through those field settings in detail just so that we can cover them off for each of the individual field types that we can add and manage in the form. Now, when you're working in the form builder and you're adding fields in, and if you want to remove any of those fields, it's a right click and then it will bring up the delete or undelete option. So what that does is when we select it to delete, it will highlight that specific field to show you that that will be removed on the next save that we make for the form template. If we were to select that field to be deleted, but then we wanted to change our mind and we actually still need to include it, or we're going to use it and change it a little bit, then we can repeat that action and it will unmark it for deletion, so it won't be removed on the next save as we're working through the form. Now, the first section here that we'll focus on is the basic field elements that are available to us. So this is primarily the options that you can see within the entry field category of the toolbox. And so when we're looking at these fields here, or any of the options that we want to use in our toolbox, to add one of those elements to the form content, it's a drag and drop functionality. So if I select the text box field, for example, and I want to drag that into my form content, it will highlight the area blue for where you're going to place the field. So you can move it around the content and drop it exactly where you want that field to be. Then once you have placed the field within the content, you can then select it and start customizing the field settings on the right-hand side using the property options that we have available here. Now, for most of the basic field elements, we have very similar options available to us within the properties, including the ability to make the field visible or invisible. And that will come into play when we're looking at events from a multiple choice field that we will cover off. It will show you what type of input the field is. And the different options where we have a number field or a currency field will just change how the user sees the keyboard when we're completing that information in the app. The number and the currency fields will limit the information that can be entered into that field to numerical values only, but it can just make it an easier experience for the app user when they are completing that information as well. The question field is where we can enter in the title for that field that we have added into the form content. And we can change the casing of the answer that is given within that field as well. So if you want to set it to uppercase or lowercase, so it will automatically default to that casing when the answer is given, then you can make that change in the field setting there. And then for our basic field elements, so such as a text field, we can use user variables to automatically populate system information into that field. So this can be linked to either the company variables. So this is all of the company details that you have added to your company profile within the account settings. Or we can even populate automatically the user's information from their user profile. So this can be really useful for a name field, for example, where we may want to automatically populate the username of the person who is completing the form. So that can just help streamline that process, again, using that information that's already available to us within the system. So you'll see within those fields that there's a few different options available to you, and you even have the ability to set up custom user variables that can then be customized per user and populated into the form template. So that can be particularly relevant, for example, where your users may have license numbers that are relevant to their profile and may need to be used as part of your forms in the account. We can make fields required. So this setting is available for most of the fields within your field options, so that the field does have to be completed before the form can be submitted. So it will automatically stop that form from being submitted without the information. We can lock the fields so that the information cannot be changed within that field. And we can also set a maximum length of information that can be entered there. So that could be relevant for a phone number field, for example, where it may have a maximum number of digits that you don't want the user or person completing that template to go over. These other features here we will cover off as examples. So for your large text box field, it will allow you to input multi-line paragraphs of information. So this is really useful for description or comment fields where you may have quite a bit of detail that the user needs to complete, and they need to be able to see all of that information as part of a paragraph, for example. For fields such as a date field that we can add into the template, we can set this to auto answer. So just like the username variable where it's automatically populating the name of the user who's completing the report, we can set a date field to automatically populate today's date that the form has been opened on. The same can be said for a time field where it can automatically populate the time that the form has been started on as well. The copy from option that we have available within our field settings allows us to copy repeating information from one field to another. So for example, if we had the client name being completed at the start of our form or at the top of the form, and then later on at the end of the form, we also had a sign-off section for that client where the client name is being re-entered. Using that copy from setting, we can set it, as you can see here, to copy the information from the first instance of that detail within the form, just so that they're not having to re-enter the same information twice. Now, the standard properties are the standard settings that we have available to us. And for our text fields, we also have the ability to set up a lookup database. So for a lookup database, you can link a form to a separate database that you can upload to your Formitize account, and these are managed within your lookup databases options in the Forms module. So what this can do is allow the user to search and select an option from the database, which can then automatically populate supporting details from that option. So for example, where we have a database that manages the different projects that we have available, we can have a column of detail in that database that shows the project name, and then there may be a project manager and a site name that also relates to that project from our database. So to set up this content within the form builder, we can select the primary field where we're going to be searching and selecting the lookup database information. And within the field settings, the default tab that it previews is the properties. So that's all of the standard field options that we have available. And there's also a lookup tab available. So this is where we can select the lookup database that we're going to use to populate the information. And then here we can link the relevant fields from the search and selection that we're making to then automatically populate that detail to these fields as required. So here we have a couple of different options down the bottom. We will just focus on the add item function here, but we do have supporting videos that go into more detail about the databases and the various options and ways that those can be used in your account. The main title is going to be the item that we are searching and selecting within our database. So in this case, it's my project name. And I want to add 2 items so that we can then populate the project manager and the site name based on this selection. So here I'm going to change the item to be the project manager. So these items are from the database. And then on the right-hand column, this is where I'm going to select the field from my form content on the left-hand side here to then populate that information to. So here I'm going to start typing the field name. This one's the project manager, and again for the site. So now when the project name is selected, the project manager and the site from the database will then populate into the relevant fields within our form template. When we add a lookup database to a field within the form, we'll also be able to identify that field from the form content with the magnifying glass that will appear next to that field name. So that can just help you to manage, especially when you're making changes to that form, so that you know that there is a lookup database that has been used and that is linked to this field in particular. Another basic feature that we have available is the use of labels. So this is where we can add default text that can then be formatted within the template that can be included for instructions or supporting information for your form content. A great feature of our form labels is that we're also able to populate information to the label that is entered into one of the fields of our report. So here, for example, if I wanted to say, give some text that says this form is linked to, and then I want to populate the project manager and the site name, how I will populate the detail that is shown in these fields in the label is I'm going to press enter an at field, and then this will bring up a drop-down list of all of the different variables that you can link to that label. The initial list of variables are your company and user variables that you can populate into that field, but you'll see scrolling down, it then shows me all of those different fields that I have added to my form template. So I can start typing the field name. So if I start typing project manager, it will then filter the list for me so that I can then select that and it will show as a placeholder within the label. So I can add as many of these placeholders as I like, linking in that information, and it can really just help you to structure that detail that is entered into the form fields into labels or information that is supporting to that template specifically. Now, moving on, we do have multiple choice field options available to us. So you'll see in the toolbox category for multiple choice that there's a few different options that you can include in your form template. Now, there's different reasons why you may use some of these multiple choice fields, and we'll go through that now. So the first field that we have as an option is a checkbox list. So this is relevant where you want the user to be able to select more than one option from the multiple choice field. We then also have a radio button that is structured very similar to our checkbox list, but it only allows the user to select one of the options from the list provided. So this is really good for a short list of options, but where we have quite a few different options that we may want the user to select from, these can be displayed within a drop-down field that is then searchable and the user can select the item. So if, for example, I had 20 different options that I wanted to add to my multiple choice field, that's where I would be using my drop-down field to include those items in the form and have them available to be selected. We can also use a button field that will give you the items that can be selected, as well as a corresponding color that can be fully customized within that form content. So this is really useful for the case where you may have an answer that's given that you want to draw the reader's eye to within that final PDF report, because there may be further actions or items that are required there. As part of the multiple choice field options that we have available, you'll see that some of the text options are very similar for our standard or basic field items, but we also have the ability to allow other for any of the multiple choice fields. So this is really useful where you may have a list of items included, but that might not cover all of the different scenarios that would need to be included as part of that list. So allow other will then give the user a text field below that multiple choice field in your form template for them to manually type in the item and add it to the list to include as part of that form. Managing the items within your multiple choice fields is done within the item list here. So there's a few different ways that you can edit and change these items. If you want to change the wording that is used for an item in the list, you can double click and then that will bring up the option to change the wording or change the name of that item in the list. If we wanted to remove an item, hovering over it will give us the delete option on the right-hand side here. So selecting that will remove it from that list. And if we wanted to add some more items in, we can either type them in or you can copy and paste an existing list that you may have. Each new item just needs to be on a new line to create an individual item within that list for us. To sort the items that are in the list to make it nice and easy for the user to search and select them, we can sort by alpha, which will sort those items into alphabetical order, which they already are. We can also manually change the order of the multiple choice items by selecting the item in the list and dragging and dropping it to the placement that we want. Now, in any of the form fields, you will also notice that there is an option at the bottom of the field settings to appear in PDF. So by default, any form that you drag and drop into your form content will have this option selected so that when you deploy the form template, that information, when it's completed, will show in the PDF report. But if you had internal information or notes that you may not want to include in that report for the customer, for example, we can unselect this field option, and then that will mean it's still visible to the user to complete as part of the form template, but it won't appear in the PDF report for the end recipient of that PDF report. Next, an additional option that we do have available for our multiple choice fields is the ability to trigger an event. So there's a couple of different events that you can set up for your multiple choice fields, and we'll cover those off now. So the first and probably most common event that you may want to use as part of your multiple choice fields is the ability to make a separate or secondary field appear based on an answer given for that multiple choice field. So to set up any of these events, we want to select the multiple choice field and then go into the events option. And then here we'll have the option to select what answer from the item list will trigger the event. And below are the different options or events that we can trigger based on that answer. So for the first example here, I want to make the defect details visible when there is a defect that has been found based on the answer yes that is given. So to set that up, first I'm going to select the answer from the options provided, and then I'm going to select the event I want to apply and drag and drop it onto the field that I'm applying that event to. So when I release the event, you'll see that it'll show the green message showing that the event has been added. And then it will also include a lightning bolt, which will appear next to any fields that have an event applied to it. When you hover over the lightning bolt, it will then give you a description of any of the events that have been included for that field. You can apply more than one event to those fields within the report, and this may be relevant where we're making a field visible, but we also want to make that field mandatory so that the user provides an answer within that field. So it's repeating the same process with the secondary event, and when we hover over those events that have been applied, we'll see that the initial visibility event is there, as well as the event that's making that field mandatory. Now, to ensure that this field is invisible and then becoming visible based on this event in our form template, we do need to select the field that we've applied the visibility event to and make sure that by default it's set to invisible. So I'm unselecting the visibility tick, and you can see that that's grayed out my field, showing that that field's invisible, but based on the event, if the defect found question is answered as yes, then it will appear in my report for the user to complete. Some other events that we can apply include setting a value in a separate field. So for example, here we have the event set where we're applying a machine price based on the option that is selected. So hovering over, we can see the different pricing that's been used for any of those options. Now, when we're working with our set value events, it is applied exactly the same as any of the event options here. But if we were to update any of those values, we just need to reapply the set value for the item that we are updating. So if the tractor price was increasing, I need to select the tractor option from my items, drag and drop the set value event onto my machine price field, and then we'll see that that has now updated the value. I haven't used the same formatting, so in that case, I can update my formatting to make sure that the answer is consistent. And then I can drop that on, and you'll see that it's updating it each time. So it's overriding the existing event to make sure that it's applying the latest value that has been set. Now, for any of the events that you are applying to these fields, you can see an overview of any of the events that are being triggered from a multiple choice field within the Events tab by viewing the existing events option here. So this will list what the option is, where it's applying the event to, and what the event is. And then if in this scenario, I wanted to remove an event from this multiple choice field, I can select the delete option and then click delete. So now that we will only have the two remaining events that are set up. We can also use events to apply a link if we want the user to be able to open a separate web link from the form. So this is combining a couple of different features. The first one being that we are using the event to set the value of a separate text field with the URL link that we want to use. So if I hover over that lightning bolt, you can see here that it's setting the value of a video that we're wanting to watch, and it's also setting the visibility of that text field visible. For the text field itself, the web link setting is used here to show that the URL link option. So it will show a link or a hyperlink within the form template when that setting is selected, so that they don't have to copy and paste the URL into a separate internet browser tab. They can simply select the URL and it will take them through to that page. Now, the next set of options that we have available are CRM options. So in our toolbox within the CRM, there's a few different links that you can add to the form. The ones that we have set up here are focusing on our CRM contacts. So this will mean when we're completing the form, we'll have a link to the contact list so that we can filter and select a client name from the available contacts that are already loaded into our Formitize account. There's also the asset items that are used in coordination with our CRM links, and we do have a separate asset management webinar that covers this in more detail. Now, focusing on the CRM options here, selecting the client name field, which is the CRM client option. This is where we can select the billing or client name from our contact list. So you can change the display settings for the options that are shown. So if you only want to show the billing name, or you can show a combination of the billing and the contact name for that contact, or we can only show the contact name that's selected. You can also automatically populate supporting contact details from that client into separate fields within the form. So just like we set up for our Lookup Database, we have a list of elements that are available from our contact details for a client in the CRM. And then here we can select the relevant field from our form that detail will populate to. So based on the options that are selected here, we have the contact name from that client being populated into the contact field. And then we also have the work phone and the email address being populated into these fields as well. So that can just be really useful for where in instances you may want to automatically send a copy of the report to that company or contact's email. So you're automatically copying the detail across, making sure it's consistent and it's always correct within the forms that are being completed by users in the account. Lastly, we also have advanced form options available to us. So this includes a range of different field types that can be used in different ways in your form. The first one being our photo option. So this is what we will use as a camera field for the user to capture images. They can either capture an image using directly through the form in the app, or you can upload images from your gallery or from your computer to the form template itself. The image option, or the form image here, is where we're going to use those static photos or images that we want to include in the form content. So within the form settings for your image field is the image drop-down option. And here we can see the images that have been uploaded to the images tab of our template. So you can select the relevant image and then it will populate it into the form content for you so that that's now available and it will be visible to the user while they're completing that template. We can also add attachments. So this can be any PDF, Word, Excel files that we want to include as reference with the form template. And we can even include a link to these attachments on the PDF report and send them as part of the email action if we have that set up with our form template. The signature field will allow you to capture signatures anywhere in your forms. And then we can also include calculations as part of our form templates. So these calculations can be used in different ways, where we may want a simple calculation here, like we're using for the volume. So this is simply multiplying each of the different items that are entered into the relevant fields here. So the calculation's set up to automatically calculate the volume for us, or we can even use the calculation field to calculate the duration between a set amount of time or dates. So some of these calculations can be quite advanced. So if you do need any support, our team can help you with setting up and making sure that those calculations are functioning within your form template. A couple of the other options that we have available is a full drawing tool that can be used to complete site maps or diagrams. We can take payments using the Stripe gateway within the form templates. And we can also include sliders that are useful for satisfaction ratings or for any feedback forms that we're creating within our account. The GPS coordinates field can automatically populate the coordinates of the user who is completing the form through the app. And then we can also use the barcode scanning field to scan a barcode or QR code and populate the relevant information into the form template based on that scan. Now, going back up to our structure here, we do have the options to include tables and repeatables. So these are really useful in different scenarios, including the option where we want to have repeating rows of detail being entered into a form, or if we're using our calculations to populate details such as pricing information, or in this case, labor, hours, and details based on that. So you can use a combination of these features to really take your form to the next level, where this example here has our multiple choice field that is then automatically setting an hourly rate based on the labor type that is selected. And then we have a calculation that's calculating the price for the hours that have been worked, and then an overall calculation of all of the individual rows that would be completed as part of that table. For your tables, these do work just like a Excel spreadsheet would, where the fields that you're adding to the table content here will be your column headers. And then when you're completing the table, the individual rows will use these columns to add that information to the form. Repeatables can complete the information in a repeating fashion. So just like in our table where we can add new rows, repeatables can be used to add repeating sets of information for those fields, but it displays the detail in a list format rather than the table format that you're seeing here. Repeatables can be really useful for information such as repeating fields such as in a inspection, where we're going from room to room and completing the same information for each of those different areas. And we don't want to have to build in those individual rooms and fields for each of those options that potentially could be available. So we have the ability to set a subheader as a repeatable within our form template. So selecting the subheader that we have added here for the building inspection, we can see that there's a repeatable option that is selected. So this will allow you to repeat all of the information that's shown within this section here. So that includes our room name and the defects identified within that room. And so we can repeat that for as many individual rooms as required as part of that form. We can also use an individual repeatable section to repeat certain fields of information, such as the option here where we're giving a description and then specific photos that relate to that description within our form template. Now, I did just mention our subheaders. So these are part of the formatting that you can give your report. So using a subheader, we can give a certain section of our report a specific title, just like we have for the building inspection, and it can really just help to break up that information within the overall form template. It does also help the user when they're completing the form using the Formitize app, because it structures the information in a way that's nice and easy to navigate and easy to understand what section of the report you are up to. Other formatting options that we have available in our toolbox include the page layout, and this all specifically relates to the PDF report. So adding in a page break will push any information below that page break onto the next page of the PDF report. And then we can also include the line spacing or physical lines within the report content to break up certain sets of detail as well there. Now, when we're working within the form content, as we're going along and adding in these fields and including making changes as well, we want to make sure that we are saving drafts as you go. So you can see here, as I've been working within this form, I have made 2 saves so far. So this is just saving a draft copy of this template so that any changes I make won't be lost, but the changes are not deployed as a live template to the users. So it's really useful when you're adding in a lot of content all at once. Once you're ready to go and you're happy with the content that you have within the form template, then you can deploy or publish the template, and this will make it available to all of the users within the account. So it will update the version of the template to a new version so that you can keep track of where those changes have been made. So that's an overview of the form builder and the key features available to you. And now there are a couple of options here that we do have more detailed videos on, but I will cover these in brief just to give you some indication of the common options that are available here. So within the PDF editor options, we have the ability to customize the PDF content, including the sequence numbering that's used to track those submitted forms that are being completed for this template. So you do have the ability to set your own sequencing if you have your own PDF numbers that you want to use, and you can even give them a prefix, just so that is included as part of that reference information. We can also customize the PDF settings, including the orientation of the PDF report, and we can add in elements to this display, including a front cover or how many photos, the sizing of the photos, and various other options there are also included. We can preview a copy of the final PDF to see what those fields will look like in the final report display. And then there's a couple of different other options available to us there. Going to the Actions tab, this is where we can set up a wide range of actions that can trigger when the form is submitted in the account. The most common action that you would likely use as part of your form template is the email PDF option, which allows you to send an email notification with a copy of the PDF report attached. And you can set this to go to a specific email address, or it can use field content from your form template to send it to the customer's email, for example, that we are adding to the form itself. So setting up new actions in your account, you can select the new actions option here. And under the action type, we have a wide variety of options that can be selected there. Specifically, if we wanted to set up an email PDF option, we can then give the action a name that can just help to identify what that action is relating to and what it is triggering within the account. The PDF file name itself can be given a name, and we can use placeholders to populate information from the report into the file name as well as the subject for the email as well. So in this example here, I'm going to press Control Space to insert a placeholder, and you can see here that it's given me a full list of the various fields from our report. So here I want to use the client's name, so we can start typing the field name to filter the list. And then I also want to include the date that the form has been completed on. So we can make the file name and the email subject the same, or you can use slightly different placeholders if you want to include different information as reference here as well. The reply to email address can be changed, but if you leave this field as well as the from name blank, it will use your company details. But this is really useful if for a specific form template you want any responses from the recipient of the email notification to go to a different inbox other than the default option that is included there. We can change the form status based on the form being submitted. So for example, here I can change the form to complete once the form has been submitted in the account. And then for more complex workflows or processes that you have relating to a template, we can use these statuses to manage those stages. And again, this is something that you can customize in the account, or we do have our professional services team that can assist with this process for you. You can add conditions that will set when that action will trigger. And for example, for this email action that I'm wanting to send to my customer, I have a yes/no question in my form. determines whether or not we want to send a copy of the PDF report to the customer. So that's really useful for, in some scenarios, you may want the PDF report not to be sent just yet because it needs to go through a review process. So by using the condition, we can make sure that only when that question is answered as yes, that email is then sent to the customer. We can attach resources to the email that is triggered from the form action as well. So this can be really useful if you have brochures or supporting information that needs to be included alongside that PDF report. And lastly, but most importantly, we can include the recipient. So here it will give you a full list of the fields from the form content. So if we have an email address field that we're populating with an email address that we want to receive a copy of the report, we can select that field. But we can also add an additional recipient that may be the user's email, so the person who is submitting the report, or using the other option, we can manually type in the email address here, for example. So then the email address entered into this field of the report will receive a copy alongside this email address here that I have also entered. So once we've completed the details for the action, we can save the settings, and then that will add it to the actions list under the category of action that we have selected. So we can see here we've got a user notification. So this is going to the user who submits the form, as well as a client notification included there as well. Now, for your form templates, I know that it can be a bit overwhelming if you're starting from scratch with a form template. So we do have a fully comprehensive form bank available to you in your account. And this does include a full range of pre-built form templates that are free to use within your account, and they can be added and modified as required. So these can be a really good starting point if one of the forms are very similar to a template that you are looking to create. So you can select the template, and then it will give you a preview of the content. So this is what our standard PDF layout is going to look like when the form is fully completed. So if we like the look of that template, we can then upload the template into our account, and that will add it to your form template list as well. Now that's everything for our webinar today. So that's a nice comprehensive overview of those form builder features, just focusing specifically on the awesome form features that we have available within that module. Now, when you're getting started with your form templates, you can use the form bank. Otherwise, we do have a dedicated production team that can also assist you with all of your form needs. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you do need any assistance with that, or if following today's webinar, you do have any questions. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for joining us.